Let me read to you a passage from the 20th chapter of St John's Gospel, verses 1 and then verses 2 to 8. It's the Gospel for the feast of St John the Evangelist on December the 27th. St John writes, "Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, 'They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they've put him.' So Peter and the other disciple started running for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen cloth lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter, who was behind him, arrived and went into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the burial cloth that had been around Jesus' head. The cloth was folded up by itself, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple, who had reached the tomb first, also went inside. He saw and he believed." That's from John chapter 20, verses 1 and then verses 2 to 8, for the feast of John the Evangelist on December the 27th. And so we are led to think of John the Apostle and Evangelist. You know, Ephesus is one of the great tourist sites in Turkey, and for the Christian it contains three special pieces: the ruins of the Basilica of St John, and of the Basilica of Mary the Virgin, and the House of Mary. The remains of the Basilica of St John indicate a most impressive structure. During the first millennium, following the reign of the Eastern Roman Emperor Justinian I, who restored and rebuilt the early church to magnificence, this basilica was held in high honour. Within the present ruins, pride of place is occupied by the cordoned section displaying the reputed tomb of St John, marked by a large stone slab. There is a sad contrast with the tombs of the apostles Peter and Paul. Theirs are the foundations of two of the greatest living basilicas in Rome, while John's, and Philip's also, in the newly discovered church at the Hierapolis ancient city in Denizli, Turkey, is in the midst of an archaeological ruin. As the pilgrim stands before the stone of the tomb of St John, he is led to think of the great apostle, the author of the fourth Gospel, the letters of St John, and the last and gripping book of the New Testament, Revelation. John was the beloved disciple who leant on the breast of Christ at the Last Supper, who without hesitation asked him who his betrayer was, and who features in our Gospel today as running with all his might to the now empty tomb. John will, till the end of the world, be venerated by all the followers of Jesus Christ till he comes again in glory. St Paul refers to him as one of the three pillars, and doubtless he was regarded as such by the infant church all his life. Simon was the appointed rock, Cephas or Peter, and John with his brother James was a pillar. But his most powerful influence came from his inspired writings. The three synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark and Luke, introduce him as among the first four called by Jesus Christ to share in his mission, and this occurred at the commencement of Christ's ministry. John's own Gospel provides the further information that this was not, in fact, their first meeting. He had met Christ at where John the Baptist was baptizing, and as a result of the testimony of John the Baptist. It was there that he became a firm disciple and fully accepted that Jesus was the Messiah. Consider this John. He came out of nowhere, as it were. Presumably, he was born and raised where we find him working at the time of his formal call, by the Sea of Galilee in the vicinity of Capernaum. Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 to 18. His father had his business as a fisherman, and John with his brother was raised with that trade, just as Christ was raised with the trade of carpenter-builder. But of course, John was a nobody. Some claim that he and James were related to Jesus, their mothers, Salome and Mary, possibly being sisters, and that they, John and James, were of priestly descent. But that is not to the point here. In the wondrous providence of God, they were contemporaries of the Messiah and came to know him, perhaps even being related to him. By the grace of God, they quickly perceived his true status and gave their hearts and minds to him. What would they have been were it not for their entry into the friendship and service of Jesus Christ? They would have been utterly unknown to the annals of history, not so much as a remote footnote. We know of John because of Jesus Christ. More important than our knowing of him, Christ was the making of him. John became a very great saint, one of the 12 foundation stones of the church, precisely because of Christ. Christ's friendship defined him, and this friendship was Christ's gift. He became the beloved disciple, beloved of Jesus Christ, and the object of his gifts of grace. Emblematic of all this was Christ's last gift to his beloved disciple, the gift of his own mother during the agony of his dying moments. We read in the Gospel of St John, when Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing near, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her to his own home. John chapter 19, verse 26 to 27. It was Christ's parting gift from his deathbed on the cross. John had come out of nowhere to be the object of the special love of Jesus Christ, the Lord of Lords, through whom all things were made. Each of us can say the same thing. We have come out of nowhere to be the object of the special love of Jesus Christ. And this is all we need for the fullest meaning in life that is possible. All is worthwhile if we have this treasure, the treasure of the grace and love of Jesus Christ. In our gospel that I read earlier, we see how supreme was the love of Christ in the heart of John. As we heard, so Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. John chapter 20, verse 1 and verses 2 to 8. St. Paul would write, "Christ loved me and gave himself up for me." These were the sentiments of John the Apostle too. It is of God's love that John writes in his first letter. God is love, he says. 1 John chapter 4, verse 8. Let us learn from the life, the vocation, and the mission of John the Apostle that Christ is our life, and that in him we possess everything.